What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. A couple of months ago, a company called Brewax reached out to me. They wanted me to test out a bunch of their products. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to be testing out a lot of their products, and we're going to see how they perform. I'm going to tell you the good things about them, and I'm going to tell you the bad things about them. So stick around, and I'll show you what I found. So the three products that we're going to be testing today are their hard wax oil. So I think this is basically just a clear coat. And we're going to compare this to Armor Seal. So that's what I've been using for years. And we're going to compare this directly to Armor Seal and see how it performs. The next thing we're going to be testing is their Brewax, just their basic wax. They sent me a bunch of different colors, but this one is the mid-brown. So we're going to be seeing how this works on wood. And then the last thing we're going to be testing is their shellac sanding sealer. I can't wait to try this because I've never used any sanding sealers. And I believe... I was reading on the back of the can, but I believe you can actually use this as a finish, so we're going to try that out too. All right, so I've got three pieces of wood here. They are all red maple. I just planed these down and I sanded every single one of them. So we're going to label these for which product we're going to be using, and these are going to be our test pieces. I'm going to grab some painter's tape and label what product we're going to be putting on each of these so that way we don't forget. All right, so we're going to start with the mid-brown wax. So reading the directions on this, it says that the surface should be smooth, dry, and clean. Apply the wax using a lint-free cloth or steel wool, thoroughly working the wax into the grain. So that's what we're going to do. Let me go grab some of their steel wool that they provided. So this is a steel wool that they provided. This is a pretty fine steel wool. I forget off the top of my head what the exact grit is of it, but it feels really, really high quality. The rolls are really, really, really nice. It just feels like good quality steel wool, and we'll see once we start applying the product how it works. All right, so I ripped off a little piece of steel wool. We're going to use this to apply the wax onto the wood. Now, one other thing that the back of the can said, it said you can use that sanding sealer first before you use the wax. So I'm going to section off a piece of this wood. We're going to just do the wax on the top, and then we're going to do the sanding sealer on the bottom with the wax. All right, let's get this baby opened up here, see what it looks like. Again, this is the mid-brown Brewax wax. I'm excited to see what this looks like. Okay, wow, that's very dark. It smells like an oil-based finish, like a polyurethane or an Armor Seal. It smells very, very similar to that. Definitely has a lot of fumes, a lot of smell, so you'd probably want to wear a respirator when working with it. Got my piece of steel wool here. We're going to just apply the mid-brown wax up top, and then we're going to put the sanding sealer in the wax down below. Got a healthy amount here, and it just said buff into the surface. All right, this is going to make a mess. Buff into the surface until you reach the desired sheen. So I'm just going to wipe it nice and even there. We'll let that dry. And we'll get some close-up shots of this later. All right, so now we're going to be applying the sanding sealer to the bottom layer, and it smells very, very strong of alcohol. So we're just going to apply this, let it soak in and dry. Just like the directions specify. And it says to let that dry for 20 minutes before you do anything with it. So let's move on to the next product. All right, so now we're going to be testing out the hard wax oil, and like I said, I would love to compare this to Armor Seal. So I'm going to section this one off. We're going to do Armor Seal on the bottom and hard wax oil on the top. All right, so the directions on this can say to apply a heavy, thick coat, come back in a few minutes, and wipe off all the excess. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Very interesting looking stuff. So I've never seen a finish like this before. We'll see what it smells like, but this is very, very intriguing. It smells just like water-based polyurethane, and I know I'm going to get a ton of emails and a ton of comments telling me not to smell the finishes, but okay, so what? Oh, good catch there. Yeah, I'm going to get a ton of emails and a ton of comments about, oh, you shouldn't be smelling this stuff, but I do think it's pretty interesting to smell it and kind of compare it to other things that I know, and it kind of gives you an idea of what the contents are. We definitely need to mix this up. All right, now that we've got it all mixed up, we're going to follow the directions and apply this with a paper towel. And then we're going to come back in a few minutes and wipe the excess off. This definitely feels like something that would dry very fast. All right, I'm going to give that a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and wipe the excess off like the directions say. All right, so it's been a few minutes, and it's dried a little bit, so now I'm going to come back with a paper towel, and we're going to do a couple coats of this. We're going to do 3 coats of the oil and then 3 coats of the Armor Seal and compare the results. So let me go grab the Armor Seal, and we'll apply that to the bottom. As you can see, Armor Seal really darkens the wood more. The Armor Seal is oil-based, so naturally it's going to do that. We're going to set this aside as well, and we're going to work on our last sample, which is the shellac sanding sealer, but we're going to apply it as a finish. All right, got a little bit more on my paper towel here. We're going to apply this to the wood. So the shellac sanding sealer that they make is a lot more similar to the Armor Seal than the hard wax oil is. All right, so I'm just monitoring everything and watching it dry. So one thing that I really want to point out is this wax that we put on here, this mid-brown wax. This stuff just made the surface of the wood feel incredible, incredible. I don't know if it's because we applied it with that really fine steel wool. That may be why. But the finish that this has on it, I'm not sure if you could tell. Yeah, right there you might be able to. It is extremely, extremely smooth, noticeably smooth compared to everything else. So this wax applied with steel wool gives you a really, really nice finish on the first coat. The sanding sealer is dry on our very first test piece, so now let's go ahead and put a coat of that wax over top of it. Got my steel wool again. We're going to go ahead and just slop this stuff on here. Looks pretty disgusting right off the bat. But we're going to buff it out with the steel wool to our desired sheen. And then let it dry a little bit. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm going to let everything here dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'm going to go back and do the second coat of Armor Seal, the second coat of hard wax, the second coat of shellac sanding sealer, and another coat of wax on top of our sanding sealer down here. Once I finish everything, I'll come back to you guys and we can do a recap, and then we can talk about what we found. All right, guys, I've got all of these samples behind me here on the table saw. I've got them all up at an angle so you can kind of see them in the light. Let's go ahead and compare all of the results. On the left here, you can see we have the waxes, then we have the hard wax oil, the Armor Seal, the shellac sanding sealer, and then finally on the right, we have the Control, which has no finish. I'm going to go through and tell you everything that I liked about all these products, everything that I didn't like about these products, and we're going to compare the sheens on everything. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. All right, so like I said, I have everything set up here on my table saw fence at an angle so we can kind of pick and choose and talk about things. So that's what we're going to do. Starting on the left here, we have the mid-brown wax and the sanding sealer plus the wax. So honestly, I cannot tell too much of a difference between the one that has the sanding sealer and the one that doesn't have the sanding sealer. Just feeling them, they feel almost identical. The one with the sanding sealer feels maybe just slightly smoother, which makes sense, as a sanding sealer is kind of a layer underneath that wax, and it gives it a nice hard layer underneath. So I think if you wanted to go for a really smooth finish, I would put the sanding sealer underneath of the wax. But I'm very, very impressed by this wax. I thought it was going to be kind of like paste wax. I've never actually used a wax before on wood, and so this was quite a surprise. This is definitely not like paste wax. This is actually a really, really nice, almost hardening finish. We're going to be trying this out on some actual pieces here in the next couple of videos, but I really, really am impressed with this, like I said. Next up, we have the hard wax oil and the Armor Seal. Now, I think this one is very obvious. You can see the huge color differences here, and we'll compare this one to the control test. So the hard wax oil is very, very similar to the control test. Almost no change in color, maybe just a tad bit darker. But the hard wax oil really, really reminds me of a water-based polyurethane. So it's almost identical to a water-based polyurethane, maybe just with some of that wax in there. But the finish, the sheen, everything is just like water-based polyurethane that I have used in the past. Obviously, you guys know the Armor Seal is one of my favorite finishes. And let me see if I can get you a good shot of the sheens there. So the Armor Seal is just a tad bit shinier than the hard wax oil. They are both satins, but the Armor Seal is slightly shinier. The hard wax oil was one of the products that I wasn't as impressed with. It just doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of protection on the wood. We would have to test that, but it just doesn't feel like it has quite the same protection as an oil-based finish. And obviously, I don't expect a water-based finish to be as durable as an oil-based one. Now, the shellac sanding sealer, on the other hand, was very nice. I like the sheen that I got with this. It's more of a shiny sheen. You can see some of the areas where I did not sand this piece, but the sheen on this is very, very nice. It left me with a really nice finish. This has 3 coats of sanding sealer on it, sanding with steel wool in between. So this is a really nice finish in and of itself. I don't use very much shellacs as finishes. I pretty much primarily stick to that Armor Seal. But this is a really, really nice product, and it's pretty easy to apply. That's the one thing that I took away from this was it's very easy to apply, very easy to sand in between coats, and you can't really mess this finish up. Now, one more thing that I noticed was the shellac sanding sealer gave us pretty much the same color as the Armor Seal. So oil-based finishes can be very, very messy, and the shellac sanding sealer gave us pretty much the same finish, and it wasn't as messy or hard to apply. So those are our test boards. I really, really am impressed with their products. I have never, ever heard of this company before. I've never heard of Briwax. I've never used any of their products. But I'm really appreciative that they sent them out. I was able to try everything out and see what I thought about it. Like I said, the big surprise for me was that wax. I just did not think that this was going to be very protective in and of itself. But you can see, just wiping that on and wiping the excess off gave us a really, really nice satin sheen, and it's very, very smooth. This is by far the smoothest finish out of all of these, and it was the easiest to apply out of all of them too. So I'll probably try this on some actual pieces here soon, and I'll feature that in a future video. Guys, thank you so much for watching this week's video. Like I said, I was super impressed by all of these waxes. I love the sheen that I got with them. I'm definitely going to be using them on a project here soon. The one thing, like I said, that I was not as impressed with was the hard wax oil. It's very, very similar to a water-based polyurethane, and I just didn't think that it did much better than a water-based polyurethane. But everything else, like I said, I was super, super impressed by. I'm definitely going to be using these on some projects in the future. Make sure you go ahead and get subscribed to the channel. I'm going to be posting a new video next week. It's going to be pretty cool. So go ahead and get subscribed to the channel. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like button on this video. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of your comments and all of your emails. I'll see you guys next week.